Folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, Four Nerds, by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with a couple second-rate DMs, I believe. I got Ryan and Scott in the house.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
And mind you, I'm not calling them second-rate DMs. Apparently, they're calling themselves that.
Yep. That's part of the joke, right?
Yeah, that's the joke.
So, how you guys doing today?
We're doing pretty good, man. We're really excited. It's always interesting to watch somebody on YouTube and then be invited onto their channel.
So, you guys just launched, brand new. First official video went up yesterday. Before that, you guys had kind of did a test video, and that's what kind of like drew me to you guys. I was like, oh, there's a bunch of you on camera doing the thing, and it was interesting. So I reached out, said, hey, you guys want to come on and talk about what you're doing, and hopefully we'll get you a little bit of a kickstart.
No, that's great. We really appreciate that.
Well, the other thing too is, right from the gate, from what I can see, the production value seemed very high. So you guys are putting a lot of work in over there, and I feel like that should be rewarded.
That's kind of the joke in the opening tagline.
Yeah.
Is that our second-rate production will make you a first-rate GM.
So what prompted you guys to get started? And we were talking a little bit beforehand. You guys have a pretty large crew behind this endeavor.
Yeah. So we have been doing stuff off and on. Most of us are more involved in some of the convention game. So you may have heard of us from the MU Skulls. And what we do is we do a lot of horror, mostly Cthulhu type games. And we've done everything from tabletop to LARPs. We ran three or four different LARPs.
I know three, yeah.
We focus more on history and stuff. So, I mean, we've met a lot of people in the industry, and we tried to do this podcast thing a couple years ago, and then our buddy just never put it in the air, which is unfortunate.
I think he realized how hard it was to cut the audio and actually go through and listen to that kind of stuff. So time constraints just didn't allow him to do it.
Yeah.
So that kind of died out.
Yeah, we were going through the actually original play test of D&D Next at the time. So we were running that. We were doing reviews on it, and it was actually really good. I think we did it for about 4 months, and it just never went anywhere. And so honestly, I think I was watching you guys or taking 20 one day, Cody over there, and I was like, you know what, let's do it. And I asked Ryan, and he's like, yeah, man, let's go for it. And here we are.
Well, that is the best way to get started, and that is just to go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that initial step is what, is what kicks everybody out. Like if you can get over that initial hump and then the initial calling for the first subscribers and viewers, then once you get over that, then I think it'll be a lot easier.
Almost like every creator I talk to is that they're usually disappointed with their early works and the first things they've done. But that's why it's good. Like in the beginning, you generally tend to struggle to get people anyway. So there's not a lot of people watching in the beginning, and it's okay because you're cutting your teeth. You're like finding your feet, and you're finding your style, and and then eventually it all comes together. It's just a matter of just doing it.
This video is awful, but only 50 people have seen it, so it doesn't matter.
And the good thing with us is we don't realize it's awful until we do our next shoot. And then we're like, oh, that's 100 times better than last week's shoot. So it's, it is what it is. We're just doing what we can. And every week we're learning new stuff and just trying to get it that much more better.
Now, I know some creators are like, they take that stuff down, but us, we're just like, you know what? This is where we came from. This is where we started. This is kind of a video chronicle of our journey. I saw a gremlin go by.
Yeah.
So what can people expect from your channel? A lot of muting. They can expect a lot of muting, I'm saying. You're muted. Oh no, your tech guy left you. You're all alone. He doesn't know what to do. Let's see. You know what? I might be able to unmute you myself. Oh, you got it.
Oh, jeez.
What'd you do?
My tech guy, you left me.
Well,
he was muted.
Oh.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We're new, right? So
no big deal.
What I was about to say is that you mentioned that we're a big crew, and that's the people we play with. We play with for a long time. Some of us have been playing together for about 20 years. And so we've all had our hat at GMing. And I think what makes us a little bit more unique than some of the other channels is that we have so many GMs. So, you know, they come over to your page and they say, you guys, and they go over to Cody's page and they see just him. We've got several different folks that are going to be coming in and talking about different topics over time. And so you're just constantly getting that different perspective and that different amount of experience from people.
And we range from literally people that have never played to people that have 20 to 30 years. So we plan on shooting videos from all those perspectives. You know, that person who's never played before, how they get started, and work our way up to, you know, all the way to doing those 30-year guys and longer videos on how to do more specific stuff.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you should say that, because you know, that's so valuable, having that range, especially the new people. Like I was on a GM roundtable the other day, and one of the question was, what did you learn from running your first game of D&D or a role-playing game? I'm like, fucking fine, that was 30 years ago. you know, like,
I don't remember 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I literally had to go through the 80s and early 90s to even remember that, and you know, those decades were a little rough. So
yeah, I'm sure they were. It's not so much for me, but it's 19 or 20 years at this point. We do have one of our newer GMs that just walked in the door, and actually I think we're getting ready to put her on real quick.
If she gets situated here.
Yeah,
but you know, that's a great thing. Like when when part of your crew is newer players, then you can ask them what their questions are, right?
Oh yeah.
And absolutely. as someone who's been doing this a long time, sometimes it's easy to overlook that stuff and not remember some of the things that maybe you struggled with in the beginning.
Right. I think it's really important, and it's one of the things that we mentioned on the channel, is that, you know, jamming is a lifelong experience. It doesn't matter if you've been doing it for, you know, a couple days, a couple years, a couple decades. There's always something that you can learn from another GM, whether it's from Bree here, or from Kayvon, who's on our first video, or from watching you guys on YouTube. There's just always something new, some new nugget of information that you can pull in and make your stuff way better.
That was a slick name handoff too, by the way. How you doing, Bree?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. So Trumoid has a question for you folks. And has any live plays scheduled for the future? And what's your current most played RPG?
So currently we don't have any live play scheduled. We're kind of waiting to get that momentum built, you know, to get our fan base built. And then we're definitely looking into, you know, streaming on Twitch and kind of doing that where the audience gives us the suggestions while we're playing. What's the word that I'm looking for?
Whose storyline is it anyway?
Yeah, whose storyline is it anyway? Where the players are really the ones that are, or the audience is the one that are calling the shots for the players. Where you've got the DM that's running the game, or GM based on whatever system, and then the audience gives us a suggestion for how the storyline's going to go. So that's forthcoming once we've really got our fan base built. As far as what our most played RPG is, it's D&D for the most part. I'm not I'm gonna burn some people here. I'm not a huge D&D fan, but that's mostly because I'm not a huge fantasy person. I'm more of a Call of Cthulhu is more my wheelhouse, if you will. So I'm more on the sci-fi horror genre, if you will. But for the most part, our gaming group's heavy D&D. I think most are.
Yep.
It's, you know, it's the gateway drug to RPGs for sure. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's tons of different games out there. We often get asked, how do you play X with D&D? And usually my answer is, why would you? Like they actually made a game for that. Why not just use that?
Yeah, that's actually one of our first videos. I think near the end it talks about, you know, you can try to cram this stuff into the system and homebrew it all you want, but there's other stuff that's out there that's just as good, and that's what we're really trying to focus on. Not so much D&D, and we're going to talk about D&D, of course, but the other systems that are out there. You know, broaden your horizons and learn some new stuff. There's really good games out there.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like the gymnastics, the mental gymnastics people will jump through in order to avoid what they perceive as change. So they'll literally like rewrite a new system based around the system that's familiar to them, when it probably would have just been less work for them to just use that unfamiliar system.
Yeah,
right.
it's probably easier to learn the system, like something like Cypher System or Outbreak or whatever, than it is to try to cram that into D&D.
So, I guess our group is we always generally come back to D&D, but we always like to venture into other areas.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get Kickstarter, is kind of a gateway drug for finding other RPGs for me. I'm waiting on Film Noir, or Noir World. I'm sorry, Noir World. It's a tabletop RPG that I just backed. I'm anxiously awaiting. I think the PDF should be forthcoming on it. It's a tabletop RPG based on film noir settings, which I cannot wait to get that one and get my hands on it and dive into it. It's just a different setting. For me, fantasy just gets played out. I saw someone ask, how can I not like D&D? Fantasy just gets played out for me, and I just enjoy the different settings. So.
I went through that. I kind of went through that phase with reading. And then I started reading steampunk because I'm like, I just cannot read another fantasy novel.
Absolutely. I love steampunk.
So, so what is your experience, Brie, with GMing and gaming in particular? So you said you're not into fantasy so much. You like horror, sci-fi. Yeah. What's your jam?
Yeah, absolutely. I've ran a D&D game for our group here. I ran 4th edition, so it was 4th edition. There's not a whole lot to say there. I had a Baylor that got...
12-second Baylor?
It was a 12... I had a Baylor get one-shotted in the 4th edition game, and I wrote it off for eternity. I will never run another 4th edition game as long as I live. You can put it on my grave. It's not happening again. But I've... Gencon, I've ran several Cthulhu games for Gencon, and then LARPS at Gencon. I don't know how much... I wasn't here before you talked about that. Briefly. Yeah, 3 now. 3 different 50-person LARPs at Gen Con that were fantastic. They're a lot of fun to run. And those were all Cthulhu world, mythos-based games, H.P. Lovecraft, and then the Cthulhu games that I've run for Gen Con. That's really my wheelhouse. I love Cthulhu. Anything that H.P. Lovecraft touched, I'm into that. And then, like I said, I can't wait to get my hands on Noir World. That film noir is going to be awesome.
Do you find it hard to get people to buy into the Cthulhu mythos? Like, because I know so many people that claim to be fans of Lovecraft and Cthulhu, the Cthulhu mythos, and I'm like, well, which books do you like, or which have you read? And they're like, none. And I'm like, okay. And then I see so many people want to play Cthulhu and they want to play it like D&D.
Right. So I think the biggest issue that people have with Cthulhu is that you either die or go insane, and that's kind of just something that you have to learn to accept. And one thing that we've discussed a lot with Cthulhu is that with D&D, you put so much love and time into building this character that you get this bond with. That's your character, and that's who you're playing. And it's character driven to play D&D, where when you're playing Cthulhu, don't get attached to that character. You will die or go insane. That's kind of the whole point of Cthulhu, where Cthulhu is more, you buy into the story. And I think maybe that's what I enjoy about it, is that maybe I'm more of a story person, I guess, that you're really selling your story in Cthulhu. And it's not, it is about the players enjoying the story, but not so much about the players enjoying the character that they've created. You're an investigator, you're a 1920s actor, whatever setting you're in. You're that person, but you're secondary to the storyline. And the storyline and what's occurring in that world is really what being in the Lovecraftian mythos is really about, as opposed to that character that you're playing. And for some people, that's a hard sell if they've been playing D&D and they're so used to getting attached to that character, and then all of a sudden your character has an affinity for all things green, and they're licking green walls and they're eating green slime, and you're like, but my character's supposed to love archaeology. Why are they eating green things? And you just have to let go of that, and that some people really have a hard time accepting that.
Yeah, like reading like 3 stories should be the prerequisite to playing in the game. It's to be like, just read any 3 stories. Doesn't matter which 3. They're, you can pick some short ones because they're all pretty short anyway. Mm-hmm. And then you'll understand that if the game doesn't end with you gouging your eyes out with a spoon, that it wasn't done right.
Exactly.
I think there's a huge part of player agency that's kind of not taken away, but given up in the Cthulhu games versus Dungeons and Dragons, where you're really expected to have more control over your character and the rules. Whereas Cthulhu, it's like, here's this card that says that you're done. Like, read what's on the back of this card, go lick this wall.
Yeah.
Well, that's horror, right? That's horror for you because in horror, that's what makes it scary is you're not in control, and you know things are happening around you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And that's why running any horror game I find is difficult because without the players buying in and going, okay, I've agreed to be scared and play a character that's scared, then it just doesn't work. Like we played Marvel Phase Rip and we played as ourselves in the Marvel universe, and there was a bank robbery, and like the other players were like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like I'm not doing anything. If I was in a bank robbery, I wouldn't want to get shot.
Right.
But, that doesn't make for a great story, I guess.
No, of course. And that's the point of role-playing, right? Is to be something else, be something better.
That's why I hate playing myself in a game. Because it's weird.
Yeah. There's some games that it lends to. Outbreak, I really
love. That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, Outbreak the Undead, you play yourself in a zombie apocalypse survival. That was hard. The element of suspense and trying not to die because you're like, I don't want to die. I have no desire to die. It was stressful actually playing the RPG because the way that we started it, our session 0, if you will, was you're sitting in your living room playing a role-playing game with your friends. And I'm like, I'm sitting in a room playing a role-playing game with my friends right now. The suspense was there because we started as our campaign was starting and zombies burst through the window, and all of a sudden you're checking the windows going, are zombies bursting through the windows? And it was frightening. You didn't want to die. You didn't want your character to die because you didn't want to die. So yeah, playing yourself can be
interesting
at
times.
Ivan Van Norman was on and told a great story about one of the games that he ran where where two friends were playing and one of them like botched a roll or something, and the friend actually died and gets turned into a zombie, and it was just like this huge emotional experience.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, for a while, it's kind of like our zombie escape that we've set up. Like we know if something goes on in this town, we've got 3 plans, 2 of which will work.
2 of which will, and we don't know which 2 they are.
But you use the maps and stuff that are in your local area. It's a really cool game. We actually met Ivan a few years ago, and he's actually going to come on our show in June, which is awesome. Because we're nobody.
Ivan, everybody's somebody, and Ivan's a really good dude. So
yeah, he is a really cool guy. Yeah.
So DM Dom, with the flood of streamers around tabletop gaming and RPGs, what do you guys do to stand out? This comes from a place of hearing about you for the first time.
Yeah, so you're right. There is quite a bit of channels out there. A couple of things that make us a little bit different. The first is the size of our cast. And I don't know when you joined the chat, but there are 6 GMs, 2 crafters. We have a writer and an artist that are with us. And so with that, we are drawing from that plethora of experience to bring that content to you. So you're watching Nerdarchy, you see these guys, and they're talking about their opinions. Or if you go over to Don Forge Cash, you've got his opinion. Colville, etc. We're constantly running through our different GMs and different takes on separate things. We're not necessarily focused on Dungeons and Dragons either. We're going to be talking about it, of course, because you have to talk about D&D, especially these days and age, right? But it's not our main focus. We are definitely about teaching people how to GM, not necessarily DM. As a matter of fact, we were writing an episode before we came on here. Our first system that we're going to highlight is actually Monty Cook's Cypher system. So we're going to have another guy come in, and you'll probably meet him here in a few minutes, and he's going to cover that system first. And I think we're doing that as a very conscious decision to separate ourselves from necessarily just another D&D group.
The other thing that we're really focusing on is kind of a 6-step process that we've really ironed out, as opposed to just kind of giving you a blast of information about this is how to be a better GM. We kind of boiled it down. It's the same things that everyone talks about, the same general advice that everyone talks about how to be a better GM, and the same screw-ups that everyone does and the not-to-dos, but put them in a logical 6-step process that everyone's following, but really named that process and broke it down into 6 steps. So for people that are like, well, I want a GM, or DM or whatever you want to put to it, I have no idea where to start. Rather than looking through a blast of huge amounts of information, massive amounts of videos, to go through a step-by-step process to really line that out for them to follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to make it easier and to streamline that process for people. Because all those volumes of information are fantastic, but some of them aren't necessarily logically lined up. And kind of that was one of the things that we saw when we were looking through all of this great information on other videos, is that you really had to dig for it. And we don't want people to have to dig. People who want to get into GMing or DMing, we want that to be an easy process for them.
Yeah. Actually, if you notice the video that we just uploaded yesterday, it's already in its own playlist, called Concept. And everything that we do from there that involves putting together your concept, your idea, will be uploaded under that. So that's really our first 6 weeks of our channel. It's laying out those 6 steps and then going from there.
Oh, cool. Is that something you guys want to talk about, or do you want to wait and release it?
No, absolutely. It's in the introduction video, but after watching the analytics, you see people like, they don't get to it. That's okay. Actually, we're going to let Bree give her piece here, and we're going to roll in another GM.
What's my piece? What am I giving?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, well, I'm getting off the screen. I get to hop out. Good talking to you.
Your pieces, get off. Well, it was nice meeting you, Bree.
It was nice meeting you. Take care.
Yeah, so one of the things that we let's just talk about focusing is that those 6 steps of GM. So the first thing that everybody does, regardless of what they're doing, is with that initial idea and that concept. And so building, how do you turn that idea into a concept? It's one thing to be like, hey, I want to play a pirate game, and talking about how to put it together. And you guys are aware of this, building your home games and your games online and stuff. You move on from there to selling it to your players, because you really need that player buy-in, preferably before you do your writing. Because if we talk about this in the future, because it's not released yet, but if you're going to spend all this time writing and then the players want nothing to do with your game, you just waste all that time, and then do that. So you try to sell that idea to them initially, and then you bring in the writing aspect, and then you do your game prep beforehand, before your sessions, running the game, and then finally finishing up with feedback, which I think is something that really doesn't get covered a lot either on Facebook, on YouTube. Is people are really discussing how to get good feedback, the different systems that are out there, and using it and applying it to Dungeons and Dragons or Call of Cthulhu or whatever it may be, so that you can make better games.
Right, because it's really all about all the application of that information. Excuse me. All right. So if you have all this great information from your players and from your audience, whatever other resource, other GMs, and you can't implement it, you're still dead in the water. So you got to have some way of getting out there, whether that's your way of writing it, or your just how you make sense of the world and how you game, whatever's going to work for your process. But you still have to use it, and don't take it as criticism. Take it as feedback, because that's what it is. It's meant to make you better, meant to make you grow, and to make your game better.
Let's introduce you.
Oh, sorry. So I'm Andrew. I'm one of the GMs. That's going to be your Cypher guy for the beginning of it, anyway.
Okay, so we got Scott, Ryan, Andrew, and Bree so far. I'm trying to keep it all straight. Well, welcome. Cypher system. We've played a little bit of that, not as much as I would like. Right now, we have a collab going on with Saver Dice for Numenera, and then we actually ran on our channel a Shadowrun game using the Cypher system.
Awesome.
I saw a little bit of that. That was part of what got me to start Cypher system. Because my first move with Cypher system was I ripped off John Carpenter's The Thing, set it in Star Wars, and let my players deal with that.
Cypher system.
And Cypher system.
That's only Cypher system can do that. Really.
That I know of. I mean, there's other stuff you can probably pull it off with, but Cypher was easy to do. Is my first experience running it, doing that.
Yeah, well, it's a nice generic system that you can kind of do whatever with, and then they came out with the Worlds of Cypher to, if you wanted to customize it even more, which I probably have around here in a stack someplace. So Fantasy Ground College wants to know, are you mainly playing and running face-to-face, or do you venture into other types of play? What he means is probably VTTs and online.
Yeah, so we do, for the most part, face-to-face play. here as a group, and that's why there's so many of us. These are our players that we play with. But I, for example, have tons of experience doing adventure in the store setting, and then 3 of us have really branched out. 4 really, we're here, have really branched out in the convention setting. So it's all been face to face. I personally have no experience with BTT.
I don't either. So you're talking to the wrong guys for that one.
We'll learn. We'll probably make Ryan do it. He's our tech guy.
Yeah, he likes that kind of thing, right?
We'll make Ryan do it. He'll do anything. No,
That's
you know, our experience has been like we were very much like you guys, but like all of our experience was kind of, you know, in-person gaming, even not even really with convention stuff, just our home group until we came online, and now, you know, we mix and match between the two. They both have their pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely something that we plan to learn because we have to, right? If we're wanting to do the Twitch and the live stream and have the interaction with, you know, the community that we really want to, we have to. And we'll do it. We'll do it soon.
Yeah, that's it's on the schedule. It's part of the plan.
I think one of the things you'll find is the online gameplay gives you more. It makes you more involved in the game. It's weird because it divests you of some of the human experience of being together and hanging out with a group of friends playing the game.
Right.
But then it just really like dials in on the game itself, so you get so much more accomplished in the game, but maybe not so much socially.
See, I never would have imagined that. You know, I'm not a grognard by any stretch of the imagination, but I've kind of fallen on that you know, the whole virtual tabletop takes away from what D&D is supposed to be.
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the concept of it's still the same, right? So
Yeah.
you have this is the medium. So you're still sitting around it's a computer, but it's still a table, right?
Yeah.
You're still talking to people. It's over a video chat, but you're still talking to people. You're still doing your thing. You're still making scenarios. You're making stuff up as you go. Yeah, the dice are digital, but they're still dice.
Yeah, I feel like
It's the same.
I feel like it's like every hour you play virtually is the equivalent to like 1.5, 2 hours of playing in person.
That's good.
And you don't have to get out of the house.
Well, that's too right. You don't even have to wear pants if you don't want to.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the videos that we're wanting to do here in the really near future, is talking about how to get into the hobby if you live in a really remote area. And I hear that a lot, actually, on different forums. That, how do I get involved? And, you know, there's meetup.com, there's, you know, Facebook groups. I've seen a couple really cool apps that are coming out or floating around on Twitch right now that really help a lot of people out, too.
I so thought he was going to go with how to GM without pants.
Yeah, I thought so too.
But that may be a whole new topic line on the video
Cody
series.
says that Dave isn't wearing pants right now.
Okay.
It could be. You'll never know unless I stand up, of course. So TrueMate wants to know: do you have a main DM for your group, or do you rotate?
Yeah, so we typically rotate. I will usually DM, and then Rob. So the two of us would typically switch off probably every other campaign. I know we have a couple of guys that just kind of pop in every now and then. So Brian will eventually be on the show and do something with us. Kayvon has jumped in. Jason. There's so many of us that do GM it and run games, but it's typically just Rob and I that rotate over.
And I run with a different group, and we've got they just started doing it. It's an on a couple of weeks, and then the next guy takes it for a couple of weeks, and the next guy takes it for a couple of weeks. And we'll change our system around, we'll change our game around. We've thrown some Savage Worlds in there. We've got a couple different Cypher games, at least 2 different 5e games that are on the docket. And after this, it'll be my turn in the barrel again. So,
how long? Well, with that kind of setup, how many sessions do you usually go for an arc?
it depends on. They're all kind of. There's a couple that are going to close, and they've been going for 4 or 5, maybe 6 sessions. I don't catch every one of them. Not everybody does. That's part of why we started doing it, so we can get everybody running and everybody playing, because we all like to play too. That's how we all started, right? You didn't just jump right into running again. So
some people have. I hear that occasionally.
We're told to skeet closer.
Oh, there you
so
go.
we're going to continue this like so.
No, this way. Yeah. No, that's too much.
Too much. We're fighting each other here.
There we go.
Anyway, now we're.
I'll just wait if you guys end up on the floor in a pile. That'll be fun.
If this had wheels on it, that would have happened.
So Cody Sand wants to know, and if you guys are looking at the chat and you see questions you want to answer, just feel free to grab them and answer them. He wants to know how you deal with the incidental TPKs, or do you magically avoid them?
So
You can go first, and I'll go after you. You've got shorter time.
So there were a couple of I've done both sides of that. I've just let the dice say what happens, and we make new characters. Or the other option that I've done is I've swept it all under the rug. I've been like, well, and you wake up, and that was a horrible dream, and we just carry on with the next little bit of story, and I treated it like a premonition. Just depends on how you want to do it, how much they've got invested in, where your story's going to go.
Yeah,
and that's really what it's about. It's what's going to work for this story. If my players do something dumb and they get smoked, that's on them. If I do something wrong, it's on me to get it right. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. So it depends on what type of game you're playing, right? So if it's a one-shot and you're about at least halfway through and there's a death, then you've kind of given that story at least as much as you could. If you were playing for 4 hours and you're at that 3-hour mark and you hit that TPK, it's done. It's a one-shot, right? When it comes to campaigns, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with death as long as there's a way to overcome it. Especially if the biggest thing that I like to do is fail forward. So I never want to make them fail to where the story stops, especially in a campaign setting that's really based around the story and the characters, which is the majority of them, hopefully.
Yeah, it should be all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, death does happen, and it's something that you have to deal with, but it's definitely not something I don't think any of us really ever avoid.
No, I don't. Yeah, I send players after, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we've throughout the years we've had plenty of character deaths, TPKs. I mean, more recently in our season 2 of Saber Dice, we TPK'd like 2-3 sessions before the season was supposed to end, and then that's just what happened, and that's a big deal too, because we have to buy character art, so it's part of the game, and much like you said, if the players are really new and learning the game, I'm a little bit more forgiving, but if they're just doing dumb stuff, sometimes you just gotta. This is the way we kind of learn, I guess. And also too, Second Rate DMs is a new YouTube channel. Their first video went up yesterday. They also have an intro video you can check out as well. There are links in the description, folks, as always, that you can go check them out, go subscribe and watch their video. Give them some love over there for sure.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it.
I have to make sure I remember to tell people, but we always try and get the information out there.
So this is Rob. He's another one of our GMs. He's been GMing for how long?
I've been playing since I was 13, so 33 years. GMing the majority of that.
No, 34.
I know.
Nice. So how are you doing, Rob? So I think you have like a year on me or so.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm doing great. Really appreciate you taking the time to give us this opportunity. We did have. I was the one that was commenting on some of the questions that were being asked of us on here, and we do have a specific question. Somebody asked about a favorite character of theirs and maybe a story to go along with it, and we think that'd be a good time to share the story of Astron.
Astron. God. So long story short, and because it does deal with the death, the last question I was talking about, I had created, and I saw somebody asking about backgrounds earlier too, but I created this amazing background, this Minotaur, and I bought this mini, and I didn't like it, so like modified it and spent hours into it. I think I started writing like a novel, right? Like didn't we start going through, and yeah, it was good. It was so good. And at the time, we'd run a game, we dealt with flaws. So we had like this random table that we were rolling on, and, and I think mine ended up being hydrophobia. And so we'd fallen into some kind of water trap thing.
I was running that campaign, and I had specifically put them in a maze for a Minotaur. trying to just create something that all the characters can really get into. And this maze happened to be filled with a number of traps, and the floor fell away, and there was a pit of water underneath the floor. So we're going through this encounter, and we're dealing with everybody. There was a halfling that was always attached to him and would ride him around like a mount, and so we had this group of adventurers that are falling down towards the water, and everything looks like it's going to be fine until one of the other players looks at Scott and says, "Hey, aren't you afraid of water?" And the dice gods were not kind to him at that point, to which his most beloved character actually perished because of a random flaw that he was given when the character was generated. So I tend to play a little more lethal campaigns than what some of the other DMs and GMs in our group do. So.
I know what you mean. Freaking kids these days, right?
But now I get to come back as an NPC, and then I can use them against me forever.
That's true.
Yeah.
And behold, the mighty Minotaur.
Yeah. Had that happen a few times.
Oh, actually, that makes me think of one of the one shots I ran for the fans when we were down in Tampa for the fantasy cruise, and two of them decided to play Tabaxi Brothers, and it just so happens that I had placed the adventure down in a well, and an underground stream or lake, and they were terrified of water. They're like, "You knew, didn't you?" I'm like, "No." So
someone asked how that it related to death. Because of the fear, I believe, with the flaws, it had to do with not disadvantage. Was it 5th edition? Or was it
this was 4th edition, and he had some higher marks that he had to do for the skill checks, and ended up failing those skill checks that normally he would have passed.
I think 2 of them were nat ones.
Yeah,
it was just not happening.
Yeah, it was strictly the dice gods that. There were some natural ones in there that, and then the death saves, of course, created the parish.
So TrueMate wants to know if there's a story behind your channel's name.
Kinda. I mean, at times, a lot of it had to do with, and you're aware of this, is branding. You're looking out across the internet, what cool names aren't taken, and they're all taken. That's the answer. So everything that's really awesome is already taken. And so, but we wanted something that you could identify with. And so I think every role player can identify with SRD. And it kind of came down to creating an acronym that went with that. Some of us are in the military and law enforcement stuff, so we're really familiar with acronyms. And so it kind of became this joke that, we've been around for a long time, and regardless of the amount of experience that we have, that we will always be second rate to people like Mercer. And we all love Matt Mercer, but he's the guy right now. I mean, he is. What do you compare him to? I mean, he's the guy until he dies or someone else comes along that's better. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many views we get or how awesome our content is. He will always be second rate to that, and that's okay with us. And we just kind of went with that joke and with the whole second rate production thing.
Yeah, and as I commented on one of the questions earlier with that. It just comes out of our love for this. We've got a passion for it. You don't take the time to invest in building these stories and building these characters unless you just love what you're doing. Especially when you go to conventions and run games at conventions, or like you said, if you're going on a cruise and you're running games for complete strangers, you don't build those long-term relationships with people unless they find your games to be good and they keep coming back to your games. Which is what we've had the privilege of enjoying at Gencon since we joined up with the MU Skulls, one of the premier gaming groups at Gencon. We have a lot of people that every single year they're fighting to get into our events, and they're showing up with generic tickets. And so while we certainly don't think we're ever going to attain a title of being a first-rate GM, we'd like to at least think that we're pretty good. And so second rate's good.
Second place in the first loot, you know that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, check these guys out because they're No, it's funny. The acronym you guys have is SRD, and I was looking at that. Was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we were just really looking for something that was familiar to gamers.
Yeah.
I really wanted Carpe Diem, but apparently some random person on YouTube has it, like nothing to do with D&D.
Oh yeah. Or we went through so many iterations of nerd and geek. When I really wish we still had all the messaging me and my brother did back and forth, and like it was like, all right, what can we get a website for and a YouTube channel for and the social media for, and we finally landed on Nerdarchy. And then, it was an extra bonus when we realized that in the Urban Dictionary that word really does exist. But but they don't. But if you Google Nerdarchy, I don't think the Urban Dictionary comes up '1 anymore. So
there you go.
Well done.
Yeah. Well, Friday. Friday. I think Friday's the 4th. So that we'll be celebrating. That'll be our 4th year officially being incorporated.
Oh wow.
So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And that being said, like we're talking about going back over 4 years ago, and like all the good names are already still taken. Yeah, so I can only imagine now if you're looking, and not to mention that all of the like random domain names I've picked up over the years, just for whatever reason that maybe we didn't do anything with. So it just like adds to the list of things that you aren't available anymore. It's the real struggle is coming up with the brand identity.
Coming up with a name is like the hardest part.
So Cody Sams wants to know: do you co-DM a large campaign or run mini campaigns, one shots? So it sounds like you guys kind of like round robin and take turns.
Yeah, so we had a co-DM game once where we focused every couple weeks. It was like me, you, and Brian.
Right.
We did that for a while. But for the most part, the only thing we've co-DM'd is the LARPs.
Yeah, well, our most recent campaign, as many people have probably experienced, we had people show up for session 0 to where we thought we may have as many as 12 players. So we actually had started off the campaign prepared to co-DM it between the two of us if we had that many people show up for each session, maybe managing different parts of the same storyline or different areas, that type of thing. And so what we expected to happen did happen. We had a pretty substantial drop off to where it was a manageable level for just one. But so we've developed a couple of different strategies, and I saw that question earlier, and I think that's probably one of the suggestions that I made of the topic that we need to cover down the road at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we totally suggest that if you have a large group of friends that show up and they all want a game, and you're looking at 10 to 12 players. You can manage it by yourself, but to be honest with you, you're going to have a couple people that are just be bored out of their mind by the time it gets back to them. If you've got another friend that's in that group that's capable of GMing, split it. Split right down the middle as much as you can, and then just kind of work together on the story, and that could be really fun because then you can have Team A doing this over here, and Team B, and then you can come together maybe one day for a really awesome interlude, and then go back out again.
Well.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that we have done very specifically, one of the events that we run with the MU Skulls at Gencon each year on a Call of Cthulhu setting is what we call Madness. And it was originally designed to bring 2 tables of players starting off independently, but the storyline brings them together for the last hour or hour and a half of the event. Some years we've expanded that into 3 tables. So you then end up with individual tables and individual sessions, and somehow those stories either interact or maybe impact one another. And so when you bring the group together and you've got 3 DMs or GMs running the story at that same time, you've got to have a lot of flexibility because what one person does or what one GM says may completely impact what you had planned and throw you in a completely different direction. So that's where a little bit of the types of experiences that we have had, I think, are going to help us to explore those ideas.
The only thing I was going to say in that is that one of the things about GMing is like you have things going on, maybe they're writing or coming up with, but you never have anyone to talk to about it because like generally the people you would talk to are all in your game. So if you're co-GMing, like that gives you someone that you can kind of talk with over this. So that is one of the benefits. Also, I will say, I believe GM Tips Satine Phoenix did a co-DM episode with the Monarch Brothers. So if people wanted to know more about that, or if you guys wanted something further to research when you do a video on it, you can check that out for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, how I guess the question I wanted to ask is this incarnation of your group, because basically Second Rate GMs is basically your gaming group. How long has this incarnation of your group existed?
Let's see. So how long has the Muse Skulls been together? That's part of it.
The Skulls have been 20 years.
Okay.
They started at Gencon when it was still back in Lake Geneva.
Right.
So the Skulls have been together for 20 years. We've been gaming together for at least 10.
Yeah. And I would say that's a part of that group also. Ryan, actually, in his original group, they've been gaming for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. Then over the last 10, we've kind of combined. So a while is the answer. Yeah. A while. A little bit.
Cool. Yeah, like, you know, that's one of the things that, like, for us is kind of interesting, is the fact that, you know, me, Ted, Nate, and my brother go back to, like, my early 20s. For them, late teens or mid-teens when we first started gaming together. And so, like our group has existed off and on since then, so, which is crazy to think about.
It's really interesting. Our first video, the guy that's sitting next to me, his name is Kayvon. He introduced me and taught me how to play D&D when I was 14 years old. So it was kind of cool to sit here with him the other day and put that video out together.
Well, that's one of the things about this hobby. It's, you know, the way it brings people together and creates lifelong friendships like nothing else I can really think of.
We're actually being video recorded right now by a film student who is doing a documentary on that exact thing, the types of relationships and people and everything else that role-playing games bring together. So he's videotaped this last campaign, or video recorded. We don't use tape anymore. I'm showing my age. But he's been video recording our gaming sessions for this latest campaign, and is going to be doing individual interviews with some of us. He's also our artist in this group. If you go to our Facebook page and you see the minis that have been painted on there, he is the one that has painted those. He is an incredible talent. I wish I could even do half of what he can do with his little finger in those areas. But so yeah, it does. It brings together an amazing group of people. It creates lifelong friendships, and I mean, it just gives you a good reason to hang out. Which in this day and age with cell phones and video cameras and video games and everything else, it's hard to find those reasons sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, even, you know, going back to the earliest days when I started dating my wife, like, you know, I went back to gaming like soon after we got together, and like every Saturday night she knew what I was doing and where I was going to be, you know. So one, you know, it was a double-edged sword. One was, well, she knew like Saturday I wasn't going to be around, but at the same time she knew I wasn't out being stupid and getting in trouble. So it's just a great activity you can do while socializing with your friends.
Yeah, my job requires me to travel a lot too, and it's kind of the same thing. My wife is like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm gonna be at the game store Wednesdays for D&D, Saturday for D&D, and probably Friday night doing some Friday Night Magic. So you know exactly where I'm at the whole time. Not at the strip club.
Yeah, there you go. So what is your job?
I'm a government contractor. So I do, how do I put it? I create programs for military folks that are getting ready to deploy and when they return for deployment. So give that information without giving too much away.
Yeah, that's fine. My wife actually worked as a private contractor for about a decade at Fort Dix. So, you know, so that's what you mean, but you're doing a lot of gaming in stores because you're traveling a lot, so you just find new stores?
Yeah. I've got a folder with my Adventure League stuff in it that I take. And then depending on the length of time, usually game stores only have a couple GMs, and I'm like, hey, you know, would you like different facing here for a couple weeks that I'm here?
So we recently had on, oh man, I forget the name already, but the name of the app is Game 4.
Okay.
And
I know what you're talking about. I saw that floating around on Twitter.
Yeah. So, oh man, I apologize to the guest, but I had him on a week or two ago, and I just go through so many. I have so many guests on, I have trouble keeping track of them at times. And he has a wargaming YouTube channel. I'm sure someone in the chat is probably gonna put that information there. But they created an app for that, like whether, and it's like Magic the Gathering, table, miniature games, RPGs, and it also has like a store finder, as well as an event finder. So someone like yourself might find that handy.
Yeah, actually, we actually just got our first sponsorship, and I'm talking about that from a group called Looking for GM, which is kind of like this. It's a resource for you to go if you don't have a game that's near you, that you can go online, you can find whatever game you want, whatever GM you want, your time slot, and then you can go on there, and they've got ratings. All the GMs are rated, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. And you can be like, hey, this guy's got these reviews, and here's a couple of written reviews, and you can use that to be like, hey, I really want to play with this guy or this lady, and go from there, which is also really good for folks that are remote too.
So Anthony has a question, and as a new DM, if I want to learn more about the lore story stuff, where is a good place to start? What would you recommend for a new GM?
The lore story as far as D&D, or
I'm not sure, but whether if you're just talking about creating lore and story, I would say you can just go straight to mythology.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at world building, I mean, that's like the whole series of videos. If you're looking more for D&D lore, I would definitely check out all the Forgotten Realms books, Dragonlance. There's some wonderful lore there.
Yeah, Dragonlance is always my go-to in that situation. Of course, it's what I grew up on, and Weiss and Hickman are my heroes as far as storytelling. Just some amazing stories there and some fantastic lore. But I mean, ultimately, I think what we're really focusing on is being able to take your own ideas and being able to develop that into your own storyline and your own lore. And that comes from a combination of movies and reading and things like that over the years. So whatever you're most interested in is what you're going to be able to create good stories with. And so that's what I always recommend to somebody in that situation is, what is it that you like? And so if you tell me you like, if you tell me you really like the dragons part of Dungeons and Dragons, I'm going to send you to Dragonlance. If you tell me that you like the espionage or the magic or things like that, then I'm going to be looking at some other areas to make those recommendations. But I think you always need to start with what your passion is, because you're going to be able to absorb that and then create more unique and entertaining areas in that fashion. Yeah.
You mentioned you being a fan of Dragonlance. Are you following the upcoming Rex Draconis?
No, unfortunately, my job right now does not allow me to read nearly as much as I would like to. You asked what our jobs were earlier. I am a deputy prosecutor, so unfortunately, business has been very good for me lately, which is never a good thing. So a lot of the time that I've been spending is strictly writing for the current campaign that I'm running, and also preparing for some of the scenarios that I'll be running at Gencon this fall.
The Richard Knack is working on Drex Draconis now.
Okay.
And I believe they're gonna also be turning it into a 5th edition content as well, and Pathfinder content.
Excellent.
But but basically it's based off of a lot of the stuff that he wrote for Dragonlance, mm-hmm. and porting that over. So he's got a short novella out. It's actually a pretty short read. And I was kind of getting on him. I'm like, you got to put this stuff on audiobook so that it's easier for me to digest it and get it in.
Yeah, but I appreciate that recommendation. If there's a novella out there, I'll definitely check that out.
I love audiobooks. So all the driving that I do, that's the audio and just go for it.
Yeah. I was definitely breaking his chops about that. I'm like, because I also used to do a lot of driving, and I went through so many books that way. Books and podcasts is what kept me going.
Yeah. 10-hour drive. I can get a book in at least.
So what is the go-to inspiration for you guys when you're thinking of RPGs?
You want to hit that?
That's hard. Especially with Kickstarter, there's been such an influx of great games out there. I mean,
I get my inspiration in a number of different ways. I still like to play video games. I'm married. I do have a child. and I don't get to play as much as I used to, obviously. But I will definitely steal stuff from certain games that I'm playing. I play Destiny a lot, so like I like to pull some of those aspects of the raids out of there and stuff that is unique and interesting to tabletop role players that they wouldn't necessarily see in an encounter. So video games is a big check for me. Matter of fact, the last game that I pulled, a lot of it was from Final Fantasy 15. So, which was good because most of the people that we played with were Final Fantasy 15. So you don't want to make it obvious that you're ripping from that. But movies and games, I think whatever is near you you like Rob said, look at what's out there and steal it and adapt it, change it to where it's not necessarily recognizable, but it still holds the main points that you were looking for.
In the hip hop world, we call that sampling.
Yeah, right. Is this another song?
And frankly, if I'm writing something, I just go to Google, because I never want to look at those first couple of results in case my players start Googling things as well. But usually, if you dig a little deeper, you can find some good things that you can adapt. And the other thing that I think we're using more of are physical props and building stories around physical props. Those are create just a different layer of adventure and kind of captures the players in a little different way than just the paper. Yeah.
So you've mentioned writing several times now. And are you guys working on products? What do you guys got cooking? If you can talk about it.
No, not really. This is our product.
Okay.
We have nothing but our experience and our friendship to put out there. There is a game that I've been working on a few years ago. Maybe someday I'll finish it. We do have a writer. She's putting together a book, Abby. But other than that, it's really not even game related. So our writing is more for, D&D and Call of Cthulhu and our games. That's what we put all of our effort into. Maybe someday.
Maybe.
I don't know. But we have a world, right?
Well, if you stick around, the fans will begin demanding it eventually.
So we have a world. We have our own world with its own history.
Yeah.
I mean, if one of us could actually write. I can't write.
Almost everyone can write. It's just a matter of how well.
There you go.
Okay, well, I write not well.
I'll let you in on a secret. It's not about the writing and the writer. It's about who you have edit afterwards. Is what I've learned. We've really lucked out, and Nerdarchy Doug is in the chat now, hanging out, and he does a lot of editing for us, and it's fantastic. Like we spew out words and thoughts, and it's like this mix, this alphabet soup, this jumble. And then he reconstructs it and makes it sound like a human said it.
Somebody named Jason Harden. Jason, this is second-rate DM, not second-rate BDSM. I'm sorry, we can't help you with that one.
Oh, I missed that one. It sounds like it might be better that I missed it.
It's on your channel, not ours. You can get that hit.
Yeah.
Well, you never know what's going to happen. We haven't had any cam girls show up in a while. I'm starting to feel neglected. They used to make an appearance at least once a week. So we're coming up on the hour mark. Parting words. Do you have anybody else you need to bring on?
No, I think we've got a good chunk. If everyone wants to slide in, I guess you could. Just kind of get an eyeball of what we've got as far as our folks. But honestly, we're just a group of people, just like everyone else. We just really love the game, and we watched WebGM yesterday, and they had their 100,000 people, and they're like, we were just hanging out, and we just kind of kicked it off, and we're like, let's do it, and we're really in the same boat. It's like let's just do it. Yeah. So we hope that you guys enjoy our content. If you don't, give us some feedback. We can't improve unless you say, hey, we would prefer to see this kind of stuff, or you guys suck, or whatever it may be.
Right. And just, like I said, the chat just going on today, it's giving us some ideas of additional content or topics that we definitely want to cover. So any suggestions that are out there, again, we don't want to just focus on Dungeons and Dragons, even though that's going to be a big part of what we talk about, because we all love it, except for, somebody we won't mention.
Because we want to have more than 3 viewers. That is unfortunately the reality. I want to thank you folks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks to everyone in the chat. Go check them out. Go show them some love. And I'm looking forward to see what you guys do in the future. And until next
Thank
time,
you.
stay nerdy.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.